Chapter 2. Alicia tapped her two index fingers against the car's steering wheel. She allowed herself to do this until the count of 30. Then she stretched out her fingers and balled them into fists. She closed her eyes and took 2 deep breaths. It didn't help. The anxiety still crawled over her, settling like a stone in her gut. She couldn't breathe. She was losing control, drowning in the stress of losing her job and now her son. She latched on to the thought of her son. She could panic later when he was safe at home, tucked into bed. Finally, Alicia unhooked her seatbelt and got out of the car. She glanced around the schoolyard and noticed the large pile of rocks stacked halfway to the school roof. A sigh escaped her at the sight. She continued walking into the main office. She had no idea where her son would have gone off to, or why, and she tried not to let her mind race with all the possibilities. Until she knew more, she would not worry about what might be. Instead, she focused on putting one foot in front of the other. She walked into the front office and headed towards the long counter that separated the administrative desks from the cramped lobby. "Mom?" Alicia turned to the bench against the front wall, and all the tension released from her body. There was Kenny, in his worn blue jeans and superhero t-shirt that were a bit too undersized after his recent growth spurt. She collapsed in front of her son, who was sitting on the office bench, reading one of his books, his black backpack at his feet. "I'm so glad you're safe," she said, gathering Kenny up into a hug, scrunching his book between them. Alicia felt the presence of someone right behind her. She was not surprised to see the light gray pantsuit with the perfect creases that could only belong to the principal. Alicia looked up to see her blonde bobbed hair, small nose, and thin, clenched lips. Alicia took in her body language and realized that the principal was upset. Why would the principal be upset when she was the one who had lost her son? "I think we should talk in my office," the principal said in a clipped voice. Alicia knew that it was not a request but a demand. "Do not move. I will be out soon." She looked at her son, taking in his slightly disheveled brown hair and his rosy cheeks that were just starting to hint at the man he would become. He lifted the tattered paperback up and was lost in the story, his legs slightly bouncing under the bench. She was hesitant to leave, afraid that he would disappear again if she left him alone. But she tore herself away and followed the principal through the raised counter and back to her compact, tidy office. Where was he? Alicia did not even wait until the door was closed before she asked her question. "He was found at his desk. We need to discuss your son's continued behavior." "What do you mean, my son's behavior? You called me and told me that you lost my son. Now you tell me that he was where he was supposed to be? I just lost my job because I had to leave work to find out that you hadn't noticed a boy sitting at his desk. We need to discuss the school's behavior, not my son's." "Why don't we sit?" The principal gestured to the folding chairs across from her desk as she took her seat, placing her folded hands on top of an open file. "There have been numerous incidents this year. Kenny's behavior is troubling. If something is going on at home, it would be better to let us know so we can support him here." Alicia ignored the chair and instead stood with her arms folded, glaring at the principal. "It seems to me that the problem is this school, not my son. Within the last 6 months, I have had to pick him up 5 times. One time was because you accused him of growing vegetables. Another time you accused him of fixing a kid's broken arm. And 3 times now you have lost him while he was where he was supposed to be. Do you have any idea how ridiculous this sounds? And now you are saying that somehow his home environment has impacted your school's sense of reality? Miss Henry, I understand that it is difficult being a single parent. There is no male figure in his life." The principal started sifting through a file on her desk, not bothering to even look at Alicia. "What would a father figure have to do with you losing my son?" "Then I understand that you have your difficulties. Perhaps that may be impacting Kenny as well." "What difficulties?" Alicia finally sat, her left hand raised to her neck, her fingers kneading her tense muscles. Then, realizing what she had done, she quickly moved her arm back down, focusing on keeping both her hands rested on her knees. She was not sure where this was going, but the conversation seemed to have gotten out of her control. It seemed so evident that the school was calling her for the most random things. No one could believe that her son was capable of what they were accusing him. "It says here in his records that you are on the autism spectrum. Yes, do you think that Kenny is as well?" A team evaluated him in preschool, and they did not see anything that would lead them to believe he is on the autism spectrum. I have seen that report. The principal shuffled around some more papers and then finally looked up to Alicia. I do not think that Kenny has autism, but have you considered how he may be impacted by being raised by a mother who does? Is there no one else who could help out? A grandparent or sibling? I know it must be difficult for you as well, and you mentioned that you just lost your job. Alicia stared at the principal, her body frozen. She wanted to defend herself. The principal needed to be told how out of line that comment was, but her words were locked behind the wall of her anger. Then she took a deep breath and let her body relax. Finally, she found the words, and they came flowing out. Miss Johnson, this conversation is now over. If you continue to call me for fabricated reasons, our next conversation will involve a lawyer, where I will be suing you and the district for discrimination. I may be a single mother with autism, but I take good care of my son. All you have are records of offenses that no one would believe. I have a pile of ridiculous notes that the school keeps sending home. One accused him of ruining someone's science experiment by making seeds grow right after they were planted. Another said that he made all the children believe that there was a fire-breathing dragon on the playground. Last week, I received a note that my son created a 6-foot-tall pile of rocks while taking a math test. Unless you're accusing my son of doing magic, I suggest that you talk to your staff about the ridiculous accusations and stop harassing my boy. Or, I will make it my mission to make sure that you are no longer at this school. Alicia stood up and walked out, trying to keep her hands still and her breathing even. She found her son still on the bench and gestured for him to follow her. Alicia heard the receptionist calling her on the way out, but was too frustrated to care what else they wanted to tell her. She was silent as they walked to the car. Her son let her cool down before they spoke, but she heard his feet shuffling behind her. Alicia opened the back door and watched while her son climbed in his booster seat and put on his seatbelt. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Ready," he answered, following their routine. He tried to give her a big smile to help her cheer up, so she reached in and kissed him on the cheek before closing his door and going to her seat. "Are you okay?" she asked as she started the car, a light gray compact vehicle that she had had since college. "I'm okay. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Your principal just made me upset. Were you hiding today?" Alicia backed the car out of the parking spot. The parking lot was small, and Alicia had to concentrate on how much space she had. It took her several attempts at pulling in and out of the spot before she finally managed to straighten the car. Kenny waited until they were moving before he spoke. "No, I was right there, but everyone acted like they couldn't see me. Miss Roth sent out Terry and Tommy to find me. I started screaming right by her. I thought she would get mad at me, but she just walked away into the class. Finally, she saw me again, and she got so mad that she called the office to come and get me. I was at my desk the whole time, so I don't know why she was mad." "Do any of the adults at school talk to you about me having autism?" Alicia waited for a few cars to pass and then pulled out of the school parking lot. They continued down the residential road. "Sometimes. They said something about it today. I told them that it makes you a better mom. You always remember to cut the crust off my sandwich, and we are always on time for everything. Plus, you play with me all the time. Most everyone else's parents ignore them." "Miss Johnson seemed to think it made me a bad mom. I told her that she had to stop getting mad at you for all this made-up stuff." They stopped at a 4-way stop, and Alicia glanced back at her son. His face was staring down at his closed book. Then she looked in all directions to make sure there were no cars and counted 3 seconds in her head before continuing through the stop sign. "I'm sorry," Kenny said. "You said you didn't run away in class." "I didn't." "Then you don't need to be sorry. I don't know why they keep saying you are doing all this stuff, but we will find a way to make it stop." They pulled into the parking lot of their apartment complex and into their assigned spot. It was a nice parking lot, with enough space in between the rows of cars for 2 cars to drive next to each other. They were lucky, as the owner still lived on site and ran the apartment. He had taken a chance on renting to them when no one else would. Alicia glanced back at her son. He was now hunched completely in his seat. "Is there something else I should know about?" she asked. "Some of the stuff happened." Alicia's eyes widened slightly at her son's comment. "What do you mean?" "They said I built the pile of rocks. I didn't. I was sitting at my desk trying to take the multiplication test." "They are getting mad at you for what someone else did." Alicia said. I don't know. Alicia turned off the car and got out. She opened the back door and squatted down next to her son's seat. If you were taking a math test, then you couldn't have made a pile of rocks. Someone else must have done it, and they seem determined to blame you for every weird thing that someone has done this year. During the test, I was picturing rocks in my head to figure out the problems. Then when we went out to recess, there was a giant pile of them. Kenny reached over to unhook his seatbelt, not looking at his mom when he spoke. Can rocks be moved with minds? She reached out to him, rubbing her hand down his arm, but he still did not look up. No, he muttered as he stood up from his seat, swinging his backpack on his shoulder. Sometimes when people keep telling us things, we start to believe they are real. Yeah, okay, Kenny muttered as he pushed past her to get out of the car. Alicia locked up the car and followed him, making sure that he stopped and looked both ways before he crossed the parking lot. They walked up to their apartment in silence, which was on the bottom floor of the 2-story complex. The doors all opened into a courtyard that had been covered completely in concrete. There were a few plastic benches and potted plants that had seen better days scattered around. They moved occasionally, but Alicia had never seen anyone actually using them. As soon as Alicia got their door open, Kenny walked past her and placed his backpack and shoes in their assigned spot. Then he went and sat down on the orange couch they had managed to acquire from a neighbor. She stared at him, at a loss for what he was feeling or how she could help him. Do you want to keep talking about it? She asked as she closed the door. In my books, magic is real. Could it be real outside of books? It would be fun if magic was real. If you could wave a wand and wish for anything, what would you ask for? How about spaghetti for dinner? His shoulders started to release, and he looked towards Alicia for an answer. Spaghetti again? She shook her head at him in a playful manner. Didn't we just eat that 2 nights ago? I think we have had too much spaghetti. No, he laughed. You could never have too much spaghetti. Ah, well, in that case, I guess your wish is granted. Spaghetti for dinner it is. But first we have the best part of the day. Reading time? Kenny asked as he raced over to his backpack to pull out his book. Yes, reading time. Alicia picked up her library book from the arm of the couch and sat down. Kenny lay down next to her, putting his head on a pillow next to her and filling up the rest of the couch with his gangly legs. Keeping with their normal routine was calming, even if Alicia could not focus on the pages.